It's Tuesday, June 17th, and welcome to the Daily Blueprint. I'm Hannah Moldavan, Deputy Communications Director for the Democrats, and your host today. Every morning, the Daily Blueprint will cut through the noise and give you the real story. What you need to know today, what Democrats are doing about it, and how you can fight back and help Democrats win. Whether you're in the trenches of Democratic politics or just want the truth, this is your go-to spot. So let's get to work. First, if there's one thing you're paying attention to today, it's this. Last night, Senate Republicans released their text for Trump's billionaire first agenda, and it includes plans to cut Medicaid even further than the House's bill. Senate Republicans have now put in writing their plans to help Trump and Medicaid as we know it with a budget that would rip away healthcare through massive cuts to the program. This budget is a slap in the face to millions of working families across the country who rely on Medicaid. A GOP Senate aide even described the Medicaid legislation as, quote, effed up. So here's what you can do right now to keep the pressure on Republicans who support this bill. If your state has a Republican senator, call them and tell them to vote no. Text call to 43367 to get their phone number and a script. And here's what you need to know today. Donald Trump continues to attack veteran services nationwide. New hospital guidelines enabled by a recent Trump executive order allows Veterans Affairs doctors to now refuse treatment to Democrats and unmarried veterans. If that wasn't enough, the new rule can also prohibit doctors and other medical staff from working at VA hospitals based on their marital statuses, political party affiliations, or union involvement. This new reporting is just the latest in a series of attacks on veterans from Trump's GOP, including proposed cuts of over 80,000 VA jobs and efforts to take away healthcare and food assistance from hundreds of thousands of veterans under Trump's billionaire first budget bill. At a veterans town hall hosted by the DNC last weekend, we heard firsthand from veterans about how terrified they are to lose these benefits under Trump's budget.
The question is, how do we stop Trump from eliminating 83,000 jobs from the VA?
And it's been a busy few days for the Trump family as they continue to come up with new ways to profit off the presidency. First, White House Press Secretary Caroline Leavitt said this on Friday about Trump's family businesses benefiting from his presidency.
Because they trust he acts in the best interest of our country and putting the American public first. This is a president who has actually lost money for being president of the United States.
Then, that very night, it was reported that Trump earned a whopping $600 million from his business ventures, including his cryptocurrency holdings, golf course real estate, hotels, and foreign licensing fees. And yesterday, Trump's sons announced a brand new Trump-branded cell phone and made the TV rounds touting the massive expansion of their father's business empire. Remember, this comes at the same time Trump is threatening American companies like Apple with tariffs that would increase the cost of their phones. Here's a look at what that would mean for you.
My goodness gracious, it would cost $3,500. That is nutter butter, Anderson. That is crazy. So the idea that these tariffs would make the phones actually be produced here, to be perfectly honest with you, it's fantasy island, because what would actually happen? Apple would probably either A, eat the tariff costs, or B, they would pass it on to the consumer, but it would not result in what I think Donald Trump actually wants, which is the iPhone being produced here. It would simply drive up costs for the American consumer.
Fantasy Island. And the New York Times reported yesterday on how the Trump sons are launching a Bitcoin mining firm, which will inevitably benefit from Trump's ongoing efforts to raise the price of Bitcoin directly to benefit his fat cat donors. Now the Trump sons are getting in on that action. The Trump sons crypto venture is yet another Trump-type business that will directly benefit from actions taken by the Trump White House and offer opportunities for special interest to influence policy by funneling money toward the Trump family. And Trump has not visited a single disaster site since taking office, despite the fact that storms around the country have killed dozens of Americans and inflicted severe damage on communities. How has Trump spent his time, you might be asking? Well, he's been golfing. Trump has spent 40 days golfing since his second term began and has attended a variety of sporting events and gatherings for his business ventures. And the time that Trump has devoted to natural disasters has been focused on working to dismantle FEMA and slow-walking natural disaster aid to North Carolina and other states, even as meteorologists are expecting a particularly rough hurricane season. Here's what Representative Jared Moskowitz had to say on Trump and Homeland Secretary Kristi Noem's handling of the agency.
She appointed an administrator who, the other day maybe joked about whether there's a hurricane season or not. Man, his mind is going to be blown when he finds out there's 5 different categories. But look, he has experience in weapons of mass destruction, which makes sense because the secretary has dropped a bomb on the agency. And so I am deeply worried about what's going on in FEMA.
Ultimately, Trump is delaying disaster relief to needed communities because of his failure to manage FEMA. And a major investigation revealed the White House knowingly spread false information about fraud in Social Security, ignoring warnings from longtime government staff and using those lies to justify giving DOJ access to millions of Americans' personal data. So here's what happened. DOJ misinterpreted and misrepresented Social Security Administration data to attack the agency and seniors' hard-earned benefits. Because of DOJ's reckless cuts, seniors now face longer wait times, offices have closed nationwide, and thousands of hardworking employees have been fired. Here's what Senator Elizabeth Warren had to say on the issue.
This is a huge scandal. Donald Trump and Elon Musk have been lying about Social Security fraud. Internal documents show that DOJ found, quote, no significant fraud at the Social Security Administration. But DOJ themselves did slow down the retirement claim processing by 25%. Look, there's nothing efficient about making it harder for people to get their benefits. And that's why I sounded the alarm on these fake fraud claims. And this time, it actually worked. Starting now, the Social Security Administration is changing its policy, and that is a big win. We need to keep up the pressure because that is how we get things done.
As Senator Warren said, the pressure on Republicans is working. As Trump and Republicans attempt to dismantle the Social Security Administration, Democrats are standing up to make sure seniors are getting the benefits they have earned. Now moving to Democrats on offense. In Nevada, Senator Catherine Cortez Masto is leading a coalition that is demanding Labor Secretary Lori Chavez de Ramírez reverse Trump's decision to eliminate the Job Corps program. This program is not only critical to providing millions of low-income adults with job training opportunities, but also drives economic developments in local communities. Now, during Trump's first term, he touted the importance of job training. Let's hear from Trump himself.
We want to give every citizen the opportunity to achieve their American dream. That's why we're committed to expanding apprenticeships and on-the-job training and vocational education.
That was during Trump's first term, but with his efforts to eliminate the Job Corps program in his second term, his actions speak louder than his words. And Democrats on Capitol Hill continue to sound the alarm on devastating impacts Trump's billionaire-first budget would have on America's rural hospitals. Last week, Senate Democrats warned that 300 rural hospitals are at disproportionate risk of closure, conversion, or service reductions in Trump's bill. Yesterday, Senator Kirsten Gillibrand traveled to hospitals and care facilities in New York to meet with local healthcare leaders, bringing attention to the devastation these cuts would bring to rural communities. And Minnesota Senator Tina Smith confronted Utah Senator Mike Lee for his insensitive and abhorrent tweets about the targeted murder of Minnesota Speaker Emerita Melissa Hortman and her husband Mark Hortman, and the shooting of Senator John Hoffman and Yvette Hoffman. Here's the senator explaining why it was so important to confront him in person.
Of course, here we have Mike Lee in the United States Senate posting this horrible picture and this terrible tweet. And I just feel like so often we respond to one another on social media. And I wanted to look him in the eye and tell him what I thought and how it made me and so many other Minnesotans feel that he had done this. And so I'm waiting for him. I'm trying to track him down. And I kind of honestly have to chase after him a bit because he is, doing that old thing of talking on the phone. And so I chased him down into a room where the Republicans were about to have a caucus meeting and pulled him out. And I told him, I said, I want you to know what you did is you put a picture of the man who killed my friend. And then you said, this is what happens. And think about the consequences of that. I wanted him to think about those consequences and what it means. And what it means not just to me, but to all of the people that are in so much pain because of this loss. I honestly, Brian, I don't think this is a man who is frequently confronted by anybody. And I will tell you, he seemed a little shocked to have anybody challenging him, let alone one of his colleagues. But I think it's so called on. We need to speak directly to one another in this moment about the impact of what people are saying and doing.
This is what it means to be a leader. And Senator Smith's deputy chief of staff sent a letter to Senator Lee's staff emphasizing just how much extra pain he's caused as they continue to grieve. In part, the letter said, quote, "I pray to God that none of you ever go through anything like this. I pray that Senator Lee and your office begin to see the people you work with in this building as colleagues and human beings. And I pray that if, God forbid, you ever find yourselves having to deal with anything similar, you find yourselves on the receiving end of the kind of grace and compassion that Senator Mike Lee could not muster." Senator Smith's staff and all Minnesotans have our support during this horrible time. And finally, and what you can do today is Virginia's Democratic primary. If you live in Virginia, visit iwillvote.com for your polling place or drop off information. If you have a friend or loved one who lives in Virginia, reach out and make sure they have their plan to vote. Thank you for joining us today for this episode of the Daily Blueprint. We'll be with you right here tomorrow at 10 a.m. Eastern on the DNC's YouTube page.